says it's recording. Okay, so this is Becky Simmons, RIT Archivist, and I'm sitting here with Jack Page and his wife Barbara Page, and we are doing an oral history interview, and it's 2015, and you graduated in 1965. All right, so let me just start with these questions, and then you can launch off in whatever direction you want. So what years did you attend RIT, and what was your major?
1961 to 1965, and my major was food administration.
Right. So you
in the Department of Business.
Right. And you received a BS?
Mine is a BS, yes.
Right. So why did you choose RIT?
I worked at Izzard's department store as a bundle boy during my high school years. And the gentleman that was the head of the men's department was a graduate of RIT. And I was deciding, it was I think in my junior year, and I was deciding where I wanted to go to school.
Right.
And he suggested that I look at RIT. And I hadn't actually heard much about RIT.
Where did you live?
In Elmira, New York.
Elmira, so not too far.
So we made an appointment. We came up and looked at it, and I did all the paperwork and was accepted.
All right.
So that's the only school that I applied to and was accepted. So that was an interesting thing.
Yeah. So you came here and you right away started taking food administration classes, and tell us a little bit about what the classes were like and where they were held. And
well, we were downtown campus.
Right.
So I don't remember the names of the buildings, but I do remember the dining room. And it might have been called Henry's Dining Room.
Yeah, there's a Henry's here too,
because
of Henry Loam. Yeah.
Yes, and in fact, it might have been the Loam Dining Room. Now that I think about it, but that was our lab area where what we learned in the kitchen is for food prep and setup and all of those things that went with professional food preparation and presentation. We would then take to the dining room, and Mark Ellingson, the president at the time, and many of the professors and other dignitaries from the school would come and have lunch, and we would provide and serve lunch for them as part of our
was it table service
practice.
Or was
yes, it was table service.
Wow.
Yes. So we learned how to prepare the food, and we learned the technology behind the food also. It was a technical course, but then also what to do with it after we got it cooked, how to present it, how to serve it, and then how to carry through and clean up afterwards. So it was very interesting.
So it was focused on more industrial, like large.
Well, it was
cooking,
commercial.
commercial.
There wasn't so much retail at the time, although one of my work blocks I did at McCurdy's Garden Room.
Yeah.
And assisted the chef there in food preparation. Another work block, I can't remember now.
Was it out at St. John Fisher?
St. John Fisher College, yes. And I did actually a couple of work blocks at St. John Fisher College, and then for about a year and a half I cooked for the priests on Saturday and Sunday mornings. So I got on the bus from downtown and made my way out to St. John Fisher College.
And did the cooking.
Very early in the morning, and cooked breakfast and lunch for the priests.
Did you do co-ops then?
Yes,
or
I did.
Those were co-ops.
I was doing co-op at the time, but this was extra. That I got paid extra for doing that. Besides the co-op that I did Monday through Friday during the week, and then on the weekends I would get myself back out there to work.
So you felt like it was a good introduction, good education to the field?
It was excellent. The education was excellent. I didn't realize at the time what the overall education was preparing me for, but it was actually giving me, this is a technical school, and it was a business department in a technical school.
Right.
So we were getting a technical grounding in a kind of a commercial retail business. And a lot of what I learned carried on. I stayed in the food service about 6 years or 7 years, and it was a very difficult service. Helen and I were talking about that yesterday, the fact that in hospital and nursing home service, which is what I got in my senior year, while I was going full-time, I was also running St. John's Home Kitchen full-time.
Wow. You know,
And
we should close that. Can you do that for me?
it's a 7-day-a-week operation, and we opened the kitchen at 5 or 5:30 in the morning in order to have the breakfast meal prepared, and then we served 3 meals a day, 7 days a week.
And they must be specialized meals because...
We had a lot of specialized meals. St. John's Home was a wellness center, a nursing home, and acute care or infirmary care. So we had, our dining room was sit-down meals for the ambulatory people, and then we did meals on trays for those that couldn't do that. So it was a very broad-based type of operation, but it was 7 days a week, and it was 17 or 18 hours a day. And it was the type of thing where, if a cook didn't show up in the morning, then I cooked. If a dishwasher didn't show up in the afternoon, then I did the dishwashing. It was very difficult getting help and having them show up. It was just the type of help we had. But so I did that for about 6 or 7 years, and then started looking for other work and found a job at French's, the RT French company, and I was there for about 12 or 13 years, and had a wonderful, a lot of the business background, the business courses, just the education in general, I think prepared me to go into a business atmosphere such as that was. And I went into what was called the commercial division, and it was new at the time, so I was instrumental in helping get the commercial division off the ground and get it started. And it was just 2 of us, a salesman, and I was the commercial products supervisor.
So what does that mean, the commercial division?
That means I did all of the internal paperwork. I did the order processing. We had a salesman that got the orders.
And they were selling mustard?
Well, we were selling bulk products.
Okay.
So we were selling the mustard seed, for instance.
Oh, really?
To Kraft Foods that took it and ground it and made their own mustard. And we would sell the spice blends. We sold spice blends to Ragu Foods, was one of our customers. Many meat companies around the country, we would prepare and sell them the spice blends that would make sausage or hot dogs. So it was that kind of thing.
Okay.
Kraft Foods was one of our biggest customers, and we sold them mustard flour for mayonnaise, all different types.
I always thought it was just mustard.
No, it was a complete line of spices.
Oh,
And in fact, Barbara traveled with me when we would do Institute of Food Technologists trips, and we tried to create a new product every year that we could present at what we call the IFT. And the one year that stands out the most was we made artificial honey. The lab developed artificial honey.
Oh, that's wild.
And Barbara and I went to New Orleans, which was where the IFT was that particular year, with gallons of artificial honey, and then we went searching around for a candy company, Praline Candy Company, the Pralines, and we found one and asked them if they would take the artificial honey and make pralines for us, which they did, and which were a huge success.
Really?
And artificial honey became a product in our commercial product line. So that was an interesting aspect of it.
What is artificial honey?
It's honey that is not made by bees. It was a chemical honey, if you will, and consistency and taste. It was color. It mimicked honey, tasted like it and acted like it, and it was easy to prepare. And if you had issues with bees, as they are in very many areas of the country,
With the allergies.
yeah, the honey, this artificial honey was a
Oh, interesting.
yeah. So it was that, but it was products such as that that we sold to other food manufacturers. And so I was instrumental in helping develop the department.
Great.
And then I moved on to a lot of different. I was in retail spice and extract, so I was a product manager for retail spices that are in the grocery stores, all the little bottles and containers. And then the last job I had before I left was as distribution manager for the company. So I moved throughout the company and had a lot of excellent experience. And I think, all of that basis comes back to the advanced education that I got here at RIT.
Great.
So I don't know if we want to get back to more
RIT.
of the RIT.
Either one. I mean, I find it all fascinating.
It
But
was, I did some things on campus that
Yeah.
were interesting. And,
Yeah.
and one of the highlights was that a group of about 9 or 10 of us started the Alpha Phi Omega service fraternity on campus.
okay.
And 2 years or 3 years ago, we had our 50th anniversary of starting it on the downtown campus.
Right.
And there were about 7 of us that were here for the reunion, that had started the service fraternity, which is still very viable and very active on campus today. So that was one of the highlights of my extracurricular activity.
Now, what prompted you to become
I'm a
involved
Boy
in
Scout,
that?
and I was an Eagle Scout, and Alpha Phi Omega is an offshoot. It's an extension of the Boy Scouts.
Oh, it is?
It's
Okay.
a Boy Scout fraternity,
Okay.
if you will. Yeah, and it's a service fraternity that is on hundreds of campuses throughout the United States. So we started because there was not an entity on campus that was doing volunteer activity, something that wasn't a social activity. So
Right.
so we created it to do service projects.
So what sorts of projects did you do?
Remember the first project, which might have started this, was the barrels of water with a little bit of Clorox in them because of possibilities of destruction.
Oh yes, when that was back in the days when nuclear war was still, and we filled barrels, hundreds of barrels with water, and put Clorox in them so that there would be a water supply.
Right.
And
Ready. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other actually, even going a step back from that, was that it was our fraternity that was invited on to the far corner of John Street and Bailey. This was long before John Street continued to go south. It stopped at Bailey Road.
Oh, it did.
Yes, and right on that corner of John and Bailey, we planted hundreds and hundreds of trees that are the trees that are used on campus today, or that were used on campus.
Oh,
So
there
our
was a
fraternity-
nursery.
Yes, we planted those.
Oh,
We had
That must have been Chuck and El Tadoti's farm.
well, it was
Were
on
they
this side.
close?
It was
That
on.
that the road went through?
It might have been. Yeah. See,
Tadoti's farm.
our kids grew up right over here off of Bailey Road and
Oh.
Academy Drive. So after going, finishing school, and Barbara helped me through my senior year, financially and mentally. We bought a house over here, and our kids grew up
Oh.
in the backyard of.
So you were here for a
RIT.
number of years.
We were here for about 20 years
Mm-hmm.
after graduation. I went to work with French's, and then they closed up the warehouse and moved it to Springfield, Missouri,
Oh.
and they closed up the offices and moved them down to Teaneck, New Jersey, and they combined with
Durkee?
Durkee Foods,
Right.
became French Durkee. And at that time, we didn't, well, and then I was offered a position to go to Shelley, Idaho to be involved in helping run the potato operation out there. And Barb and I, and
French's had the potato flakes.
yeah,
Oh.
and when we had
Like
baked
instant potatoes.
Mhm.
We ate those a lot.
Yes, and we started another product which is still very viable today, which is Procter and Gamble's
Pringles.
Pringles. And
Oh,
we-
yeah.
At Winnemucca, Nevada, we created a plant and developed a potato that was a low sugar potato that is used in the production of those potato chips, and it had to be low sugar because when you cooked it, they couldn't. You know how if you've had Pringles, how they're very yellow,
Yeah.
they're not brown like
Right.
a French fry. That's because they're a low sugar potato, so the sugar didn't caramelize when they were deep fried. And so we created the product for P&G and grew the potatoes and processed them into flakes and then shipped them to Procter and Gamble for use in their potato production.
Oh,
So
interesting.
That was another French's product that we developed. So, I was invited to go to Idaho to help in running the potato operation, and we sat down and decided that was just not a place that we were from this area. The kids grew up right here, and we decided we didn't want to go to Idaho.
That far west.
It was a long ways,
It's-
and I had been.
There's not a lot
out
there either.
No, it isn't. It
Unless you like rural life and
it would
horses.
not. Yeah, been exciting for
Yeah.
I think Barb and the kids, and probably not me after a while.
Yeah.
So I left and was looking for. Where actually I was recruited away.
Yeah.
I was recruited away by a moving company, Vogel Van and Storage. So I left French's and went to Vogel Van and Storage, which was just the other side of the thruway,
Okay.
past where the inn is,
Mhm.
was where our warehouse was, and I became the general manager of the moving company here in Rochester. And I guess we're kind of getting off of what
No,
I did at
that's-
RIT, but it's how my
I find it fascinating. I mean,
Yeah,
that's fine.
it's
you know.
how my career
Right.
has progressed. And what happened was the fellow that was a general manager was promoted to vice president of sales, and they
Mhm.
needed a general manager. One of the things that I was responsible for is in distribution manager. I had moved out of the industrial products and gone into distribution, was all the household good moves of all of our people at French's all around
Oh,
the
right.
country, all the
So-
salespeople. And I had a team of people that handled all of those moves. That was
Mhm.
one of the departments that I was responsible for. And Allied Van Lines, and we used about 4 or 5 moving companies, but Allied Van Lines was consistently the best. We
Mhm.
had consistently had fewer problems
Yep.
with them, and I kept giving them more and more business to the point where I told Sharon, unless there's a reason not to give Allied all of our business, because we never had a problem with them.
Yeah.
Well, they saw the uptick in the business, of course, because they were getting all of our business, and that we were doing a lot of moves, salesmen in and out
Right.
of Rochester and around the country. So they actually recruited me to come on board and take over as the general manager of the Rochester operation. And at the time, it was just Albany and Rochester.
Mm-hmm.
And then over the next 7 years before we closed the company down, we grew the company to a little over 500 people.
Mm-hmm.
Barbara, myself, and actually our daughter went off to college, but our son moved to Albany, and I started a human resource department there, and became the vice president of human resources for
Wow.
Vogel Van and Storage, and created created the whole department. And
So you moved to Albany.
mhm.
Okay.
We lived for about 12, 13 years in Albany, And through a bunch of unfortunate circumstances, the owner of the company, we had to close the company.
Oh.
We became bankrupt, and the owner of the company went to jail. And a group of 5 of us tried to buy the company back from the banks, but the banks, he had messed it up so bad that the banks wouldn't give us credit. So we closed the business down, laid off. We had actually, when we were at our peak, we had 4 locations in Florida, 2 locations in California, and 4 locations here in New York State.
Yeah.
So we had 10 locations. We were the second largest agent in the Allied system. We had over 100 drivers on the road.
Oh,
And we had to close it. We closed it down, and the bank took over all the equipment
Oh.
and everything.
Shame.
Yeah.
So I was kind of at my wit's end. What was I going to do? I was maybe early 40s and without a job.
Was
and
this the
economy
70s?
This was in 86.
86.
83, 86.
right.
And the economy wasn't
Yeah.
doing real well. Didn't know what to do, and I went to a recruiter,
Mm-hmm.
and hoping that she and they could find me work. And with the background I had
Sure.
in human resources, she said, "Why don't you come to work for me?" So I became a headhunter, a recruiter,
I love it.
and I worked for her for 3 years. Yeah, it's amazing.
Circuitous.
And along the way, like when we were here in Rochester, I was a volunteer fireman and became the senior officer, and was, I don't know, about 10 or 11 years a firefighter. And interestingly enough, did more than one call at the NTID building
Yes.
when we had fires, and on campus here. This was my territory.
Were the kids doing,
Well, they
or was it
It
building
was-
problems?
well, like kids would,
You know.
a
Smoke in bed or something?
well, and a trash can might get started.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
And so we would have to come over. But one of them, more than one, I think 2 or 3 were working fires that we had on floors back then. And then we had other issues on campus.
Yeah. There's
so-
always, you know.
And
Sure.
that was volunteer work while I was, doing.
You were a busy
doing-
guy.
I was. We were very busy, and I was a coach, a soccer coach, and I was also a FIFA ref. Got my license to be a FIFA ref. So a lot of interesting. I've had
You do a lot when you have kids.
yeah.
Yes.
And a coach. We coached. I coached a travel team.
Mm-hmm.
And then we moved off to Albany, and I was the president of the Capital District Human Resource Association for a while. And some of these things I got into and didn't know how I got into them, but I ultimately did. And then ultimately left after 3 years. I had a no compete clause so I had to stay with her for 3 years, and I couldn't leave and start my own firm unless I moved or had an office an hour away. So after 3 years, I found a small office in Saratoga Springs and started Page Associates. and actually I did that for about a year, and then moved home to Albany, and we had a big house in Albany, and Barbara and I did Page Associates for 20 years.
Oh my
I was
goodness.
a recruiter and headhunter. And finally got to a point where we said, why are we doing this in Albany? Let's get out of here. And we had friends in Florida, and moved our business to Florida. And
Right, because you're on the phone. You don't really need
it was
to.
all on the phone. It was phone and computer. And so we closed it with the advent of internet.
Sure.
And who was the
Monster.com.
Monster.com,
Oh, right.
the big
Sure.
blimp. Well, they really, the online resume activity
Kind of,
killed our business, because
They were the first ones.
Yep.
companies would pay me 25%
Mm-hmm.
of a person's first year salary to find that person and screen them and clear them and get them on board. So, but in the course of doing that, I also wrote a book, which was called "Are You Ready?" It was actually a workshop to prepare college juniors and seniors for the job search, and I presented that to students at the University of Albany, to juniors and seniors, and helped them get ready for their job search, and had the workshop for them.
Wow.
So that was interesting, and then we moved to Florida, and closed after a while. I think I can't remember
I
when,
don't know.
but we closed the business.
And retired.
Kind
Yeah.
of, yeah.
You're not going to
Kind of.
sit still.
No.
I don't think.
No, we've been busy doing all kinds of stuff. So
Oh, good.
So that's kind of
That's your life.
that's 50 years.
So should we go back?
Okay.
Back to RIT?
Sure.
Back to RIT. Yes.
So where did you live when you were here?
My freshman year, I lived in the Nathaniel Rochester Hall at
Okay.
the corner of Main and Plymouth.
Right.
And then for the next 2 years after, I lived in an apartment on Plymouth Avenue,
Oh, yeah.
just in the first apartment building past the parking lot, which is not there anymore. And in 1963, my roommates and I watched the riots of '63 from our apartment building.
Yep.
And lived there until Barbara and I got married, which was at the end of my junior year.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got married and moved out off of Winton Road.
Okay.
And Barbara was a nurse at
St. Mary's,
St. Mary's
Oh,
Hospital.
really?
which is no longer St. Mary's
No.
Hospital, I understand.
No, everything's changed.
And I
Everything changes.
commuted to school
Uh-huh.
in our 1957 Ford,
58.
or 58 Ford Fairlane.
Nice.
With a 3-speed on the gear shift, on the
Yeah.
steering column. Yeah.
Nice. So, what was it like watching those riots? I mean,
it was
Were you-
it was very, very scary. We were right on the
Yeah.
edge, and there was
we literally saw them.
Oh yeah, we saw them, and it really kind of stopped. There were about 4 more buildings, and then there was a little grocery store on the corner, the next corner. It really kind of stopped at that corner, but we watched them loot the grocery store, and there were fires, and they were burning tires, and but we didn't venture in. We just ventured out to where we could watch it, and then took cover. I mean, we got in and stayed out of the way. But it was a pretty traumatic time for Rochester over here on the west side.
I mean, I heard from students, well, not students, but your fellow 65ers
Yeah.
yesterday, some saying that it was just, even when you were sitting outside, sometimes there were incidents, people.
Yeah, there were. It was. We didn't venture over there, but we were right on the edge.
Oh,
We
yeah.
were right on the edge, but we went north. I mean, we never ventured south. There wasn't any reason for us to go into the neighborhood, so we stayed pretty clear of it. And we were busy too. I mean, I spent most of my time on campus,
Right, in the building.
in the buildings, and not too much time in the apartment, to sleep, and because I was in food administration, I had a meal ticket, so we didn't do much cooking in the
Right.
apartment. So
Just ate on campus.
yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So
So you did. We had a question about the co-ops, but you've sort of talked about those. I don't know
my
if you have
co-ops
anything.
were a ball. I enjoyed doing it. Ma Maddox, Mrs. Maddox, was the food service manager out at St. John Fisher, and she just was looking for somebody to come in and help, and I was enthusiastic, and I spent a lot of hours at St. John Fisher College. As a matter of fact, I had a little problem with freshman psychology here at RIT, and Father Sosowski out at St. John Fisher gave me one-on-one, and I actually took psychology from him. I'd already had practice here at RIT, but didn't do too well at it, but I did very well at it when you're sitting one-on-one.
Sure.
And so Sunday mornings after breakfast, I had usually an hour and a half or two with Father Sosowski
Interesting.
to take
A psychology.
1. So, and I got through that. So, it was before I met Barbara. Actually, I was pretty busy on campus, and my grades were almost adequate. And then when I met Barbara, I became a dean's list student. We were pretty close.
She straightened you out.
I got up around 2.8 to 3.0 most of the time after I started dating Barbara my sophomore year.
You're funny. So, do you remember, any food service for faculty that you remember or have something
Viola
special?
Wilson.
Uh-huh.
And Helen and I talked to her about her yesterday to some degree. She was very, very difficult. Viola Wilson and Mr. Green were the two that I remember. And I can't remember her name, but and it wasn't in foods, but we had a chemistry professor that, and I don't remember her name, but I'm not good at memorizing, but she taught chemistry in such a way that I was able to get through chemistry because she made it interesting. Otherwise, I would have had a terrible time with it because I don't memorize well.
I understand.
But Viola Wilson was, it had to be done right. There was only two ways. It was 100% or it was 0. And to get through her course, you had to do you had to do 100%. It had to be right. And my biggest problem with Miss Wilson was that I lived in an apartment, and when we were in class, we had to wear whites. We had to wear white shoes, white pants, and a white shirt because we were working in the kitchen. Well, I didn't have a ready, easy means to keep my whites clean.
Right.
And when you're working in the kitchen,
they're going to get dirty.
And I had 2 sets, and I scrubbed in the bathroom sink every night. I scrubbed a set of whites and tried to press them. I didn't have an iron, but make them look as good as I could. But she let me, and I was not 100% on my whites. That was one, but she understood and let me skate through on that. And I think Helen was mentioning yesterday that she said, well, one thing. And I didn't remember. I remembered her, but I didn't remember her visually. But she remembered me right off the bat, and she said, "Well, you made going through the foods course a lot of fun for us." So I don't remember a lot of that because I was not an easy student. I had to work. We've got grandkids. I never see them studying. I had to work very hard to get a degree from college. And apparently, though, I made it interesting for everybody else. But and I know a lot of it was in class. It was in food prep. And my senior thesis was a comparison of dairy products to non-dairy dairy whips to non-dairy whips.
Right.
And I can remember a lot of failures in food lab when I was trying, a dairy whip. You can take the can and spray it and it's good, but in the non-dairy whip, you could do the same. But if you were trying to create both by hand, it was a difficult process because you couldn't just go buy a couple of cans and compare them. I had to do a full thesis on it. So, and I had a lot of failures in class, and I can remember that the others used to enjoy my failures. I mean, enjoy the fact that I was having a hell of a time getting something to come out right.
That's
And,
funny. I mean, it's not funny.
It was,
Sure
no,
it
but
was,
but it was a.
In your comments, Jack, too, probably, that you made.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've always enjoyed being around and doing things
Banter.
and yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So and
Witticisms.
Miss Wilson was tough and
She didn't care for your sense of humor, maybe.
Yeah, that was a problem.
Tough beans.
So,
she,
but it
sounds,
was-
she sounds old school, you know.
Oh, she was.
Like
Oh.
a battle axe, you know.
She was. But she was, as Helen said, we learned the right way.
You think
to-
that was good?
Oh yeah.
ultimately.
Oh, it was wonderful. In hindsight, at the time, it wasn't.
But you don't have to. I mean, I think you can teach without
Oh, you
making
can.
it
That was,
unpleasant for the
that
students.
was her.
There's
style.
other ways to entice them to do the right thing.
That was her.
It's probably what she knew.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I
so-
know. It's like parenting in those years,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly. But it was fun, and I pretty much remember fondly my years.
Right.
Here
Yeah,
at
that was one of our
RIT.
questions. Was
Yeah.
there anything you disliked about RIT?
Um,
And you know.
I did not dislike Miss Wilson. I mean, it was a
Right.
difficult thing, but I don't know that there was a lot. Do you recall anything that was bothersome to me?
No.
Not
It
really.
was expensive. RIT was expensive.
At the time, it
I
was.
paid $800 for 3 years at nursing school. He paid, what'd you pay? $800 the first year.
Yeah, and then 500. In
And
fact, we were
500,
looking at it up in
500.
archives. 525.
500, then 500, and then the last year was $1,100.
$1,100.
Now at that time,
Yeah, that's a lot of
It
money.
was a lot of
that
money.
time it
and,
was.
and
We paid student loans for a while.
Mhm.
Ugh.
after that.
yeah, and my sister had married young, and her husband had had an accident, an industrial work accident, and so he had to stop work, and so Mom and Dad helped Sandy, and we were a blue collar
Mhm.
family, and so when Barbara and I got married, actually Barbara supported us through. I mean, I was working also, but without Barbara, we would have had a terrible time getting through my senior year, because it was back then. It was 4 quarters
Mhm.
the senior year. The freshman year was 3 quarters. Then we had the summer off. Then sophomore and junior years were a quarter on, and then a work block, quarter on, and work block.
So you went through the summer.
Oh yeah, the last 3 years was 12 months each year, work block or school.
Mhm.
So we did 6 months of school and 6 months of work block, and then the senior year was 4 quarters of classroom, and that was $1,100 back then, and then books.
It sounds
and-
like nothing right now.
Yeah.
No, I know.
I mean, you could drop it
Well-
$1,100
Yeah.
on the TV
Right.
without any trouble at all.
So, how much did you get paid at your co-ops?
Oh, I was probably
Like
getting
$1?
paid about
$1 an hour?
$1.75, maybe $2 an hour.
Well, that's pretty good.
It wasn't bad for the time, and especially during the time when I was going to school, I was eating. I mean, I was working in kitchens, so I had
Free food.
food. Yeah, I had abundance
And for a young
of food.
man, that's important.
Yeah, it was. So I
Ate a
only
lot.
had to get the food. I only got the food ticket on my freshman year.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember that was expensive, and I can remember Mom and Dad having to figure out how we could cover
Mm-hmm.
the cost for that. And I can remember my good buddy Jack Blair asked me if I would go down to where did he live? In Pennsylvania. His girlfriend, who was not Kathy at the time, had a good friend, and he invited me to go down to go to the senior prom with them. And I needed a tux, and I can remember asking Mom and Dad if there's any way they could fund rental of a tux for me because I was invited down. Betsy Boyle was her name, to Bradford, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
New Star would be.
So I went, and so Mom and Dad somehow or another came up with the money for that. And the other thing I remember is Florsheim loafers with the tassel that they let me buy from the Florsheim store that was down on Main Street. And I was able to buy a pair of those. There were a couple of things that were highlights because it was difficult for Mom and Dad to fund my education.
Yeah.
So that
In a way, I didn't really mean that it was expensive in today's thinking, but at the
back
time.
then for
Oh.
us,
the
we
time.
had loans that
Well, the
that we
kids
had
do
to pay.
now too.
the loans today are astronomical.
It's crazy.
So, but it was downtown camp was fine. Another thing that was really fun that I did is back then we had club hockey. But
Right.
hockey was
Mhm,
becoming
just
a
starting,
big thing
right.
on campus, and Al Conklin and I broadcast the hockey games
Oh, you're kidding.
from high above the ice here at the Ritter Clark Memorial Ice Rink.
Sure.
On
On WITR?
WITR. And when we were here a couple of years ago, I went down to WITR and talked about them. They lost. They didn't have. We were on the air and they had tapes and things, but they got lost over the years.
Sure.
So they didn't have the tapes, but they gave us some T-shirts.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, did they?
And it was wonderful, just being in the studio. And of course,
Yeah.
we were up in it was a little catwalk
Yeah.
out over the ice. It was a little narrow
Really?
walkway, and then we had a room we had a little desk in front of each of us and just a little chair, and we each had the little earphone over, and it just had the wire that went over your head and the one little round earphone, and then we had the little hand mic
Oh, really?
that we had to hold on to. But we were right out over the ice, and we were broadcasting. Al did the play-by-play, and I did the color. So we did that for a year.
Oh.
All the home
Oh, that would be.
hockey games.
Wouldn't it be great to have a tape of that?
Oh, it would have been fantastic. And Helen remembered. Oh, she says, I remember you guys up there broadcasting the games on the campus. And the broadcast didn't go much further.
Right.
Well, it didn't go any further than campus, and I don't think we could pick them up in our apartment. That was that just small radio station.
Was there a big crowd at the game? Did
Oh
people-
yes.
people
Well,
like-
a big crowd. I don't know if you've ever been in.
I've been in the.
It
in
was
the-
just there were just seats on one side.
Oh, that was it. Okay.
And then it was it was just a wall over on the other side. So that's all there were was seats. So you could probably get 300 people in there.
Right.
And yeah, we got 50 people. I mean, it wasn't big because it was just getting started, but we had a lot of Canadian kids that came to school because the soccer or the hockey program was starting.
Right.
And kids came. We had teams come down from Canada to play our club, and that was how we began to get Canadian kids coming into the hockey
Right.
program.
You going to the game tonight?
No, we're not.
Yeah,
We did a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and we did it with a fraternity. We decided we didn't want to go and just kind of sit separate from. When we were there, we did it with a fraternity reunion, and
And
we
we
all
know
got
people.
together.
Yeah, but that would have been.
had dinner
yeah.
before
Right.
that RIT provided, which was wonderful.
Oh, nice.
Over at the War Memorial,
Blue
the Blue Cross
Yeah.
Arena,
Now.
we had our own little room, and then we had a whole section
great.
of seats. So we had a great time.
Oh, I've
we
never-
decided not to go tonight.
Yeah, it's fine.
And we're
But-
here with our kids.
Yeah.
Oh, your kids are here too.
Spencerport.
Oh.
Spencerport.
They live up in Spencerport.
Both of
Our
them
son
live
and
here?
daughter-in-law.
Oh.
Yeah. Our daughter lives down in Lakeland.
Okay.
I said kids, but I mean everybody.
Yeah.
Over there.
And
yeah.
grandkids.
So.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So it's wonderful, and Henrietta is home to us. My best friend that started the fraternity. There were we lived right over here on River Meadow Drive.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So this is
Like home base, your
Love to-
second, yeah.
Just love to come back. I except for the weather, it'd be wonderful.
Well, come in the summer. You know how
Well, we
beautiful
come
it
in the
is.
summer, but it'd be wonderful
Oh,
to
my
live
gosh.
here in the summer
Yeah.
more than just our
Well, you
kind
know,
of temporarily.
We have neighbors that have a house in Florida. They're from here. They bought a
Mhm.
house in Florida, but they rent an apartment next door to us, and we've gotten real
See,
friendly with them.
And that's kind of, we're getting to that point where it'd be nice to find an apartment.
Uh-huh.
Because what we do now is we come up and stay in the kids' camper, and it's a good sized one. It's an RV, well, not an RV, but it's almost a 30-foot camper. But so we come up, there's 4 kids.
Mm-hmm. You had
and
4 kids? Oh, no, they had 4
They
kids.
have 4 kids
Oh, my
in the
gosh.
big
We're
house.
grandchildren here.
In the big house, and so we go out and get away. So are we?
Are we running?
Oh, she just
out of
was
time?
waving. So,
Oh,
you
We'll
know,
hurry through it.
we got 5 more minutes, but,
Okay.
you know, do you remember Stephen Wells or anything to say about
Steve
Mark
Walls,
Ellingson?
Steve
Yeah.
Walls, I remember
The
Mark.
fraternity.
I met Mark talking.
Because I know Steve Wells was like
Walls.
Walls
Steve
was a
our-
figure.
he was our fraternity advisor.
Right. Well, he was.
Steve and Susie and their daughter.
was
We
a-
spent a lot of time at their house.
Right.
We spent a lot of time with Steve. Steve was a wonderful,
Yeah, that's what everyone
wonderful
said.
man. He was, and Richard Zakia.
Oh,
Dr.
Dick.
Zakia.
Yeah, he passed away a couple of
Yes.
years ago. Oh my gosh,
Dick was
the
also-
nicest man.
He was our advisor. He was
Uh-huh.
our fraternity advisor.
Mhm.
And
Steve Walls was RIT.
he was. We loved Steve was wonderful.
Yeah.
Downtown and he headed up the student union, the student activity center. And that's where we had our meetings. We spent a lot of time at the student activity center over in that house over there and out at his house.
Mm-hmm.
We always had a bunch of people out at his house.
So funny, isn't it?
So Steve was wonderful. Yeah. That's a fond memory. Yeah.
Well, this is great.
I don't know if
Anything else?
Was there any questions that we?
Oh, I don't
Yeah,
know. You didn't play sports.
I didn't play sports. No.
Pondus record. You've given us anything you dislike? Fraternity, sorority. You talked about that. Professors. Mark Ellingson, Steve Walls. You talked about tuition, graduates. Yeah.
Mhm.
Did you have career? Were you co-op? Extracurricular You kind of.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Covered it?
The student body, I mean, the sense of campus, I think there were, 7,000 students at that point? It was pretty large.
It was pretty good size. I don't know if there were that many then. This was 1961
pushing
through
it.
5.
Yeah, maybe more like
maybe
5,000.
4 or 5,000.
I can't believe they
But
all
you
fit
see-
on that campus.
But here's the thing. And it was interesting at the downtown campus because there were only about 2,000 of us that were day students.
Right.
See, the majority were night students.
Right.
And those night students were workers from primarily Kodak and Xerox that came on campus in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
So there were more night students than
Right.
there were
It
day
was a
students.
commuter school.
Yes, and the nice thing about there were a lot of day commuters. There weren't a lot of us living on campus.
Mm-hmm.
But the buildings, the other nice thing was that the classrooms, the buildings were open at night, so we could kind of get off the streets and get into
Mm-hmm.
the buildings and usually find a classroom to sit down and study in and work in if we wanted to. So then the Rathskeller
Right.
was an active place, and I can't remember the bar over on the corner, but we spent a lot of time over there.
Not me.
And there, a picture was taken, and it was on the back of one of the, what was the name of the RIT Reporter, and it was an ad for, was it? I can't remember the name of the bar, but it was right over on the corner of Broad and Main Street, or one block down.
It
Yeah.
wasn't the brothers, two brothers or something.
No, that was near our house. But there were a bunch of us sitting around with a couple of pitchers of beer, and I might have even at the time had a cigarette because I smoked
did
for a
smoke
little
for a
bit of
while.
time. That was another thing. I got away from home, and I can remember meeting my mom and dad on Plymouth Avenue alongside, and I have a cigarette, and I didn't know they were going to be walking over. Oh, you're smoking? Oh, yes, I started smoking. But it was a big full-page ad on the last page of the RIT Reporter, and it was about a half a dozen of us from the fraternity that were sitting there in a picture. And I proudly sent it off home to Mom and Dad to see what their son was doing in the evenings. Which wasn't a big hit with them. But we moved around on the campus a lot. It was it was a friendly place. It was a fun place to
Uh-huh.
And it
be.
still seems to be.
It is. We just love being
Also
on
nice.
campus.
Everybody, I mean, you could stop anybody and ask them
Yeah.
directions, which we did today.
Yeah,
Everybody.
Yeah.
It's a civil place.
Yeah.
It is. It's wonderful.
That's great.
And there's a vitality. I think you folks that work on campus become part of it because it's your job, and it's something that you go to every day. What I have found is that there's a vitality to young people
Oh, yeah.
that when you come on campus,
They have,
it's another reason I'd like to live closer, to be able to spend more time on campus. I'm still involved to some degree with a fraternity that's on campus.
oh, really? Oh, good.
Not a lot because we're a long ways away.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd like to be more involved. It would be
Right.
nice to be closer, to be maybe an advisor.
Yeah.
Wow.
As
That
a
would mean
charter
moving
brother.
here for winter.
I know. Thank you. So,
Well, thank you very much. I really
It's my
appreciate it. This
pleasure.
was great. We have so much fun doing this, just listening to the
it's
life stories and
Learning-
learning about RIT. I'm
learning
sitting here
some
listening
things.
to you, and I'm like picturing the campus and what you're doing.
it
And
was a ball.
I mean, this is why this is so important to do this,
Yeah.
because we can read about and see photographs, but it's nothing like your
No,
honest,
exactly.
real experience.
Yeah,
So
exactly. It was wonderful. I just did something else that